Number 1. I have a story about Mexican witchcraft. Not crazy like some stories on here, but it's completely true. Grew up on a ranch in northern Mexico with my parents and grandparents. I was told that my aunt, my grandfather's sister, is a witch. My grandmother is this small, incredibly positive native woman. My aunt hates my grandmother for some reason. We used to wake up and find weird objects around the ranch. They looked weird, usually pieces of wood and bone tied together with small pieces of rope. Scribbles all over them in red paint, definitely not in Spanish. Grandmother would always say, "Don't touch that," and scoop them up quickly. She would cover them in ash and pray over them, and then go off and throw them away somewhere. She said they were curses sent by my aunt. One day, my grandpa flips out. We're eating breakfast when he stands up. Eyes are wide, darting all around the room. Sinks to his knees and passes out. He's bedridden for hours as we wait for the nearest doctor to show up. His right hand and arm swell up pretty bad while we wait. Doctor shows up and says it's a snake bite. But he looks around and he can't find the fang marks. He treats it like a snake bite anyway, but nothing happens. He's stumped, checks grandfather one more time, and says there's nothing he can do. Grandmother is worried. She walks up to the church down the road to pray. We stay with grandfather, but I go outside at some point and see my grandmother hurrying back down the road towards the ranch. "It's your aunt," she says. "She cursed him." Apparently she was praying and got a vision of my aunt next to a snake burrowing into the ground. Grandmother searches the ranch and finds a small area under a window that's clearly been dug up. Digs up a rattlesnake fang tied to a small broken bone. Has the same red writing scribbled all over everything. Grandmother coats it in ash and prays over it as usual. She says she'll have to go far to get rid of it and to keep an eye on my grandfather. An hour later, I watch as my grandfather's swelling goes down. Literally looks like he deflated, like a balloon. Later, grandmother comes back and grandfather wakes up as she walks through the door. His eyes look completely black for a second before going back to normal. He looks at us and asks what the fuck happened. Grandmother, who's normally very calm and quiet, lays into him about his fucking sister trying to kill him. Never heard her talk like that before. Later, after a period of not much happening, grandfather showing me how to tie a solid knot. His right arm suddenly drops. The rope falls from his hand, and he looks confused. He looks at me and falls over, dead. I run and tell my mom. Everyone starts freaking out. Long story short, we have a funeral, and then try to go on as normal. One day, my grandmother finds another curse lodged into the center of a tree. She thinks that this is what killed my grandfather. It's a long, thin blade tied to a human hand with all the fingers broken badly. I asked her about it after I got a little older, and she told me more about the curses. She said that the first curse that made my grandfather swell up was a broken finger bone tied to a rattlesnake fang. And the one that killed him, the human hand, was missing a finger. So for a long time, she thought the broken finger came from the same human hand. But she always wondered whose hand it was. And well, after a few years, my grandmother and aunt ran into each other at a shop. And that's when my grandmother saw that my aunt was missing a hand. Number 2. Be me, 6 years old. My mom left my dad because he was a textbook abuser. She wised up and fled back to her home state with me in tow. Moves to a house in the middle of nowhere. Lots of vegetation and forests, but nothing else. Probably scared that my dad would find her otherwise. Move into a cheap old house that had recently been renovated. Falling asleep the first month we were there. I need to pee. Get up and head for the bathroom. Once the main vein is sufficiently bled, I pack up and head back for my bed. Enter the hallway, and there stands death. It looks like my dad, but it's off. I think it was a smile. To my memory, my dad never smiled so wide that all of his teeth were countable. I'm getting bad vibes, and I can't move or speak. Scared that my dad is gonna hurt Mom again. He walks over to me, bends down, almost at a complete 90-degree angle, meeting my eyes. "Wanna live with me now, kiddo?" This isn't my dad. He never called me kiddo, buddy, son, or any other nicknames that some dads affix to their young sons. "No." His smile turns into anger. He screams like this weird mix of a bull and a boar. Raises his fists up and brings them down at me. I scream and fall to the ground and start to cry in the fetal position. Mom finds me and asks what's going on. I tell her. She assumes I was sleepwalking and asks if I want to sleep with her that night. I do. Other things happen, but I don't really remember them well, since this happened when I was 6 or 7, and we were only there for the first year lease. Be now, 25 years old. Talk to Mom and Stepdad about the house. Mom tells me that after I was asleep, I came to the door smiling wide. I asked to sleep with her tonight. Mom doesn't know what to do since I was already right there, next to her. Just starts saying, "Get out of my house." Thing gets angry and charges at her. She wakes up the next morning. Number 3. I'll tell one that my uncle once told me. I was visiting my dad's family in North Carolina one summer after my parents divorced. I was pretty depressed, but that trip is now one of my fondest memories. My uncle took time off work, and he and my dad showed me how to fish and how to handle a gun, and they shared a bunch of childhood stories with me. One night, we were up late, and my uncle told me about something that spooked him as a kid. Dad and Grandpa go out hunting. Uncle stays home because he has a broken foot. Bored out of his mind, just lying in bed thinking. His dog, Tater, is asleep in the sun under the window. Tater suddenly lets out a Scooby-Doo style howl and scurries under the bed. Footsteps are crunching through the grass and dirt outside, like someone in heavy boots is approaching the window. And a strange sound that my uncle can't identify. Footsteps stop at the window, but nobody's there. The strange sound is clearer now. It is a very weird sounding voice. Uncle told me that years later, someone showed him Mongolian throat singing, and it sounded almost exactly the same. Only there was something staticky about this. Uncle freezes, listening intently. He can almost make out the words, but not exactly sure what they're saying. First 3 words sound like, "I can see." Sounds like, "I can see where it is." but it's hard to be sure. Uncle decides, fuck it, and hops over to the window on one foot. He looks out the window. Nothing but fields and forests and mountains. The strange voice gets really loud though, and sounds panicked. Voice becomes warbled and seems to be yelling the same thing over and over again. But Uncle can't understand any of it. Bright fucking flash. Everything goes white for a few seconds. Uncle finds himself back in bed. His heart is racing. He said he thought he'd had a nightmare. Except Dad and Grandpa both came home early and said there was a white flash that nearly blinded them as they were coming out of the woods. Number 4. This one's pretty shit, but it spooked me. Just started university. Living out of state on my own for the first time. Doing laundry late one night in the apartment laundry room. Light bulb is out because, shit apartment. Room is just barely lit from outside lights trickling in. Waiting on clothes to finish washing so I can transfer them to the dryer. It dings. Open up the dryer, and I see movement in the back. What the fuck? Think it's an animal. Peek inside. There's a little opening at the back of the dryer, with a little circular open door. What looks like a small little human hand pops out of the dark opening and pulls the circular door closed. Door closes, perfect seal. Can't even tell where the door was. Feel around back there and check for cracks or seams. There's no noticeable door. Number 5.
Be me. Last year, here in UK, Scotland, we celebrate Guy Fawkes Night on November 5th every year. Always have fucking huge ass bonfire and fireworks. All the parents from my street, some of my family was there. Some of the neighbors' families were there too. All just getting drunk and chatting while fireworks were going off. I see this one firework go off, and I'm now watching the smoke fade away. As I'm watching, these two lights, won't call it a UFO, cause fuck knows what it was, slowly started to rise over a hill that wasn't too far away. Another firework goes off. The light seemed to stop and started moving sideways now in perfect sync. Really slowly. Another firework goes off. The lights stop and sit still. They're pretty bright, but nobody's really noticed it yet. I walk over to my uncle and ask him if he sees them stop. He sort of looked confused as he notices it, and started telling people to look at it. Dad's still setting fireworks off, and the lights continue to sit there. We eventually run out of fireworks. About 30 seconds after the fireworks stopped, the light started to slowly back away from us and headed in the opposite direction. Fuck knows, man, I was spooked. I really don't know what to think about it.
Number 6.
BB. Silly American.
Friend.
18 at the time. Bring a nice looking classmate home after a big party. We do the dirty. Cat walks in. Didn't see him since I got home. Cat looks at classmate. Gives the longest, saddest moan I have ever heard in my life. Must have been at least 5 to 7 seconds long. Cat jumps on the bed, crawls right into the woman's arms, and cuddles up. Be me. Surprised as fuck that my extra shy cat found someone he likes. Weirded out by moan, but think I found a new wingman. It's morning. Parents have gone away on vacation. Cat still cuddling with woman. She is super stoked. Loves my cat.jpg. She tries to leave. Cat visibly trying to prevent her from leaving. Cat crying at the door after she goes. Cat doesn't leave the door until an hour or so later. Classmate died when she got home. She fell down her stairs and hit her head on a desk corner. Same ain't on with Black Cat. Different story. Less crazy. Be playing Skyrim. Cat dozing on my bed. Knock on the door. Cat growls, runs over to the top of the steps. My room is upstairs. Top of the stairs, looks down on door. Dad goes to the door. See, it's some homeless dude. Wisely does not open. I didn't see the homeless dude until this point. Look out window. Neighbor grappling with homeless man. Yell to Dad. Inform him of the situation. He goes over to help. Is my cat clairvoyant?